Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you. All right, we're going to talk all about the Michigan fans are ready to boycott ESPN Game Day. They are not happy with ESPN. Oh, not one bit.
Don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
And we got to talk about our buddy Shane Beamer. Is this a must-win for South Carolina? And are they sign-stealing buddies? Now, obviously, I can't prove this. This is allegedly and all that good stuff. But some people call it conspiracy. But the mounting evidence on this, the circumstantial evidence is huge. And I actually watched a video, and a lot of people have been covering this, but I saw a video that laid this out beautifully. I thought I had done a good job on it until I watched these guys, and they kind of knocked it out of the park. And I'm going to show you some clips of that because they took it to the next level. And to me, it's fairly convincing, but again, it's alleged. And let's get into this. This is on a site called Awful Announcing. This is on multiple sites, by the way. It says Michigan fans are calling for boycott of college game day and amid the sign-stealing investigation. And it talks about this huge game Saturday. Look, this is the game of the year. This is the one that everybody's going to be watching. Normally for me in the SEC, it's usually like a Georgia, Alabama, SEC and all that kind of stuff, or it's Tennessee, Alabama, or whatever, Auburn, Alabama. But this is monstrous because the politics behind this, you've got the two coaches that don't like each other. As a matter of fact, Jim Harbaugh was asked if he respected Ryan Day, and he did the biggest tap dance I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it was impressive. So he didn't answer the question, which so he does not have much to say about Ryan Day.
Well, that's the story of my life. No respect. No respect.
And as far as this game is concerned, it's at Ann Arbor, which is a huge advantage for Michigan, and they probably need it because they struggle with Maryland, and of course they didn't have their signs. So we'll see how this goes, but man, what a mammoth game. I believe last time there was like 14 or 15 million people watched that game. I think this will be over 20 million. Because I don't know that I even watched it last year. This year, I'm going to watch every play. It's just, I'm going to have it on. And ESPN Game Day is planning on being there. So the Michigan folks, they are ticked at ESPN because ESPN's been hard on them. And I believe it's Pete Thamel that actually kind of broke the news on this investigation. It was coming out anyway, but Pete Thamel's usually the first guy, or one of the first guys. And on social media, it's all over the place. Said the best thing Michigan fans could do is just not show up. Game day is only game day because of the crowd. Then it says do not show up under any circumstances. Another guy says the team and coaches should refuse to speak to any of the ESPN team except Desmond Howard. And Desmond Howard's been carrying water for Michigan hard, man. And I don't blame him. Hey, he's a Michigan guy, Heisman guy. Says they shouldn't welcome ESPN after all the propaganda they've been spreading against the school. Tell them to kick rocks. Game day will be for the few Buckeyes in Ann Arbor. Wolverines, please head to Big Noon Kickoff. See you there. And Big Noon Kickoff is a Big Ten affiliate, so I'd say that place will be packed with folks. But it'll probably be, like I say, a lot of Buckeyes at the ESPN Game Day, and there'll be plenty of Ohio State people there that can make it look good for game day, I would think. But you probably won't see as much Wolverine folks there because they are not happy. And Paul Feinbaum's made them mad, and a bunch of the other guys because they've just been calling them out, talking about the fan base being, pretty much, I'm going to use the term immature. They used much stronger language. So we'll see if they're successful with this boycott. They may very well be, especially since they have an option to go to Big Noon Kickoff. Now let's get into this sign-stealing scandal, which still involves Michigan, also involves Tennessee and possibly South Carolina, because we know Michigan had been scouting Tennessee during the Kentucky game, and they supposedly got our signs and signals, and I believe they also were scouting Clemson. And so the whole big thing is about whether or not Michigan had reached out to another team, and there was reports in footballscoop.com with a person with direct knowledge that had happened, and I'll show you my mountain of circumstantial evidence. And there's so much of it I ran out of mountain, but the direct knowledge comment and that somebody actually believes that happened. Beamer had been fined $25,000 for previous taking of opponents' information or receiving it. The fact that South Carolina only scored 16 points total prior against Missouri and Florida, two decently quality clubs that Tennessee had beaten both of last year, by the way. And then all of a sudden they scored 9 straight touchdowns and 63 points. Really?
You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
And then South Carolina, of course, beat Clemson, their second top 10, and they had been a very average school and playing very poorly, and their offense had been struggling, but then they suddenly win another top 10 game at Clemson. How many times have they done that? Almost never. South Carolina at the time was 2-6 now. Now they've won a couple of games to beat Jacksonville State and Vanderbilt, and then they barely beat Kentucky, which that's actually a quality win. At home, they won that by 3 points. But the wristbands are big. Those wristbands that they had, and I've shown you pictures of it, and it'll show that in this little video clip as well. They had wristbands that the players wore that helped them, I guess, as almost like a cheat sheet. What else would you have a wristband for? And they only wore it starting in that game. Hadn't worn it all year up till then. And then, they win that game with the wristbands. And then the next year, this year, they come to Neyland, the place they would need it the most. They didn't wear them. Wonder why you didn't wear the wristband, South Carolina. Wouldn't you do the same thing you did last year when you boat raced us? Oh, well, I guess you didn't need them now, did you?
Oh.
So anyway, I'm just not impressed by that at all. Also, I can't even fit it on here, but their assistant coach, their defensive coordinator, actually worked for Jim Harbaugh, by the way, at Stanford. So it just mounts and mounts and mounts. But now I'm going to let you listen to these guys. This was a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't actually see this. And this is Hot Mike, and these guys lay it out beautifully. And let me assure you, there are a lot of people that are talking about this in the news media, in print, and also YouTube, website, everywhere.
And the tentacles of this thing continue to stretch across America. This is not just an isolated Michigan story or an isolated Big Ten story. This now has national ramifications when you start to connect the dots about what may be going on here. Because the last part of this, and this is where this scandal goes national, is the implication that comes in a story from John Bryce of footballscoop.com. We will have John Bryce on this program a little bit later, and we're going to talk to him about this. But the implication and the report that Michigan not only scouted these opponents, but possibly aided the opposition of their possible opposition in the college football playoff in an effort to knock them out of the running of the college football playoff. Davey Hudson with us now. Davey, it's not that difficult to connect the dots here to South Carolina and Shane Beamer and the last two opponents of the season. And you've done a little bit of digging on this, and it didn't take a lot of digging. It just took looking at schedules and basing all of it off reports that are already out there.
Yes, so, Chad, as it relates to Michigan, if you were to go back to the date, November 15th, 2022, that's whenever the college football playoff rankings came out. And if you look at the top 10, you currently had 4 undefeated teams in the country at this point. You had Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, and TCU. Now, when you think about it, Ohio State, Michigan, they're going to have to play each other. But what happens in this scenario if Michigan loses and you're a one-loss team not playing in your conference championship? You're going to need some help in order to still make the college football playoff. There are 3 one-loss teams currently still left in the top 10 at this point. You have Tennessee, who was 5th. You have Clemson, who was 9th, and USC, who was 7th. But if you were to look at Tennessee and Clemson's schedule, they do not have many difficult opponents left. Now, the big thing for Tennessee in this situation is we know that Connor Stallions went to watch Tennessee play Kentucky, or at least his minions, on October 29th. So they have already scouted Tennessee. We have proven that based off all this evidence from the Sports Illustrated article. But the one common opponent that Tennessee and Clemson both have, South Carolina. Both of those teams would likely have the advantage over Michigan if they were, in fact, to lose to Ohio State, and all these teams have one loss.
Also, Dave, you sent this to us earlier, but this is from Gators Reddit, the Florida Gators Reddit page that posted this on X and said, surprise, Vol, Twitter isn't running with this more. The week following this alleged scouting, the South Carolina defense wore wristbands for the first time all year. Would not be the first time that Shane Beamer has gotten into trouble for accepting and using stolen information. And there's a link to a story from the AP from 2016 where Georgia fined then assistant coach Shane Beamer $25,000 for accepting leaked game plan information while at Virginia Tech.
And we've covered that, and I've showed you that article. You know, this was years ago, 2016, but he's done this before. Now, here's the thing. Once you become head coach, if you know anything about watching Jim Harbaugh, there needs to be plausible deniability. So Shane may not have been fully aware of what was going on if this happened. It might have been an assistant or an analyst. That's typically how they were doing it at Michigan. It was the analyst, and obviously it appears one of the assistants must have known because he was destroying evidence, and that's why he got fired. So it probably didn't go as high as Beamer, but we also know that Beamer probably wouldn't mind looking the other way if it meant he could win based on his previous past discretions. I mean, the guy got fined $25,000 for this very thing. So anyway, just food for thought.
Prior in 2014 during that scandal. So this would not be Shane Beamer's first time accepting intelligence on an opponent in order to gain an advantage, if in fact this was the case. Look.
And the key with this is they followed that game up by beating Clemson.
Yep. Another opponent scouted by the signs were
not
stolen
just
or scouted.
one coincidence.
Right. It was nutty, that game against Tennessee, because South Carolina the week before, as the poster mentioned, got destroyed by Florida, who was not very good last year. They were reeling offensively, and suddenly they were a juggernaut on both offense and defense for a big portion of that game. Defensive players wearing wristbands for the first time. Look, we have no knowledge of this. There's not a report directly stating it's South Carolina, but it's not hard to put the dots together and say maybe it's just a gigantic coincidence that South Carolina became a completely different football team with 2 games left in their season and looked great in those 2 games and put everything together. And the wristbands against Tennessee were the secret to stopping a Tennessee offense that was previously unstoppable. Maybe all that's a coincidence, or maybe, just maybe, Shane Beamer, who had to pay a fine, or Georgia did before for accepting illegal information from Wake Forest, maybe he got tipped off to something going on.
And in thinking back to this game.
So I thought you'd want to see that. I thought those guys laid that out pretty astutely, to say the least. And this is not going anywhere. Now, here's something really important that they mentioned that I think is going to have long-term ramifications for this entire case. And let me let you listen to this part, because I think this is really important.
Look, we're not out here just making allegations willy-nilly. We're connecting the dots. Anyone online right now could do it.
There's a lot of people doing this.
And there's a lot of reports out there that back some of this stuff up. I will say this. If the law firm that handed over all this information from the computers is what they're basing the investigation on, we will know. Time will tell. But if there's any type of electronic communication between anyone at South Carolina and anyone that scouted for Michigan, we're going to find out about it based on the level of intelligence that was acquired by this law firm. I also see this ending in a Connor Stalions tell-all interview on HBO Real Sports or somewhere else, because this guy ain't getting a job in college football again. I think that dream is over now. This is becoming a national scandal. So what do guys that don't have anything to lose do eventually? They talk. And Connor Stalions has a lot of talking to do at some point. Now, maybe he won't because he loves Michigan so much, and that he's not going to do it to hurt his university that he loves and cares so much about. Or maybe he gets paid some money and tells all and talks about the extent to which all of this went. It's a crazy story, Hutton. And the further you dive into the rabbit hole, the more offshoots and roots.
Yeah, so I thought those guys did a great job, and my hat's off to them. I've been trying to do that good a job, but I've not gotten to that level. Those guys have really thought this through, because it looks obvious. It looks obvious what happened. Of course it's alleged. Of course it's, rumor. It's innuendo, but it's tons of circumstantial evidence. So while I cannot prove this, it sure looks iffy. And on top of that, I'm going to stay all over this thing, because at some point, all this stuff with Michigan, all this stuff possibly with other teams like South Carolina is going to come out. If there's something there, like he said, with the law firm involved, NCAA investigation, they're going to put out a document this thick. And you've got FBI up there, and journalists are going to sift through that like crazy. And if there's anything linking Michigan, any electronic messaging, an email, any of that to any South Carolina employee, analyst, or assistant, we're going to find out about it. It's going to happen. It may take a while. It may not. We'll see. But I'm going to be all over it. I'll just go ahead and tell you. So I did want to bring those stories to you. The whole Michigan thing, we'll see if the ESPN gets boycotted. And this South Carolina thing, I wanted y'all to hear from these guys, because they did a nice job. And if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Let's me know to continue to cover all these NCAA issues. The SEC, my Vols, of course. The Big Ten, it's Michigan. My gosh, I cannot take my eye off of it. It's so intriguing. And if you'd like to get my videos, make it even easier, just hit that little subscribe button on your right, my left. Just hit this little button right here. It'll make it real easy for you to get them. Doesn't cost you a dime. And I'll stay on top of this stuff for you. And right over here is most recent video YouTube thinks you'll enjoy. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.